Chester swan population. The River Dee rises in the mountains of Snowdonia in North Wales, just to the west of Lake Bala. After flowing northeastward along a broad valley to Corwin, it plunges down the beautiful vale of Llangollen before leaving the Welsh foothills near Bangor-on-Dee. It then meanders northward through the Cheshire Plain before eventually swinging northwestward at Chester. After flowing over the Chester Weir, then onto the Old Dee Bridge, it then progresses another 18 miles along the Dee estuary, finally discharging into the Irish Sea. Although not particularly long, at approximately 80 miles, the River Dee today proudly represents an internationally famous example of advanced water management. In simple terms, water is stored in reservoirs during periods of heavy rainfall, and then released back into the river by controlled sluice gates, thus supplementing the natural low flows and permitting constant extraction, while still maintaining a reasonably constant volume of water in the river. By these means, almost 200 million gallons can be extracted daily by 5 water authorities, while still allowing approximately 80 million gallons to flow onwards to the sea. This process was initially set up in the early 19th century to allow a constant supply of water to the local canal system. Thomas Telford, the Scottish engineer, famous for his canal, road and bridge building expertise, was the forerunner in this endeavour, and although today the system is much modernised, nonetheless the same principles are still applied. During your cruise today, you may see mallard ducks, waterfowl such as moorhens and coots, herons, cormorants and swans. In the UK, all swans belong to the rainy monarch. The most common type to be found on the river is the mute swan, the largest native British bird, with a wingspan of more than 6 feet. In 1974, there were approximately 100 swans at Chester, but during the 1980s their numbers almost vanished due to lead poisoning, nest vandalism and injuries sustained from human litter. By the late 1990s, 20 to 30 breeding pairs had returned to the river, but today sadly the numbers have once again diminished. Recent evidence suggests that for whatever the reason, the swans have possibly just relocated for a while to the nearby canals, lakes and other local rivers close to Chester. If you're really lucky today, you may even see a black cormorant on the riverside or standing on the weir. Should it have its wings fully outstretched, then it has probably just eaten and is now digesting its meal. What you are unlikely to see is exactly what's in the river. There used to be 2 main types of fishing on the river, both under license of course. Below the weir, in the lower reaches of the river, salmon fishing was undertaken commercially for decades. In common with most rivers on the western coast of the British Isles, the River Dee at one time saw huge numbers of salmon returning regularly to spawn upstream. In 1997, for example, the salmon were so numerous during their return to the sea after spawning that some mistakenly leapt into many of the rowing boats at the quayside. Of course, being good upstanding citizens, the crew returned them to the river, thus allowing them to continue their journey. In more recent times, the National Environment Agency bought up all the traditional fishing concessions in order to preserve fish stocks, thus ending commercial salmon fishing below the weir. Above the weir, coarse fishing still takes place using rod and line. The River Dee is home to many fish, including the likes of chub, perch, roach, dace, bream, pike and salmon, of course. On the subject of boating, I'll bet that not many of you are aware that Chester holds the distinction of having the oldest regatta in the country. In 1814, more than 10,000 people lined the riverbanks for a regatta in celebration of the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte. The following year he escaped from captivity and regathered his scattered forces, only to suffer another devastating defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. Naturally, Chester celebrated once more with yet another regatta. Cambridge held its first regatta in 1829, whilst Henley-on-Thames, generally regarded as Britain's principal international rowing event, only held its first regatta in 1839. For the moment, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a short break in the commentary until the commencement of the return part of the cruise, after which point some of the more interesting views from the river will be outlined, hopefully, for your further enjoyment.
He's hurting. Beautiful.
As the vessel turns to begin the return part of your cruise, take note of the large white building with the very long window. It is known as Carlton Villa. It was the site of a Roman villa almost 2,000 years ago, and it's still possible to see part of its base below the modern foundations. Further upstream is a stretch of water known locally for quite obvious reasons as the Long or Straight Mile. Many British rivers do not have